really doesn't want to live stream you today for some reason.
Yes.
Oh, there
we
you
go.
go. Yeah. All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. I don't mind. I'm sure there's, yeah, sure, whatever you say.
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to Colloquium. I will point out that this is, there are only 2 more officially scheduled colloquia left after this. The 2 more, so we have next week Christian Leipzig, who got his PhD at Clemson and is now running his own sort of data science company. He does some work with Mary Beth Searcy, so he's coming to give a talk about his experience in using data science. And then on November 1st, Karen Hallbrands from NC State is coming to talk about her work in math ed. After that, I think we will have some statistics candidates coming in. Oh, no, never mind.
We'll see.
We're going to have some shifts in colloquium.
We'll see.
Well, okay. After that, be on the lookout for more information about what might happen.
I'll give another colloquium.
With regards to colloquium. Every member of the Statistics Search Committee will give a talk. But today, we have Dr. Rene Salinas, who is going to kind of give us all an update on what's going on with sports analytics.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so since this officially, the certificate we have officially started this fall, I figured it'd be good to tell you what I've been doing last year and how fun and strange but engaging it's been. So I'm just gonna sort of give you give a history, kind of what's happened, and then where we're at, what we're doing, and then appeal for help, right? That's always the other side of it, right? Once you start something, you're like, okay, I can't keep this going. Come on, Greg, you can do this. So to give you a history, in fall 2007, I had been talking to some of the coaches, baseball coaches, because they're pretty data driven, and I asked them if they were interested in analytics in any way, and I got a little bit of seed money from the dean, and they had talked about the pitching coach, who's very data driven, they're really good. I talked about Rapsodo, which is this pocket radar thingy that's a little bigger than that thing that sits behind the catcher, and it records, it's a high resolution camera that records all this information from every pitch. And so the data was amazing, and we sort of played with it for a while. But as with anything with analytics, right, the real key is having raw data. And with many things that are cheap, the raw data is housed on a website, something you log in, and it's summarized there, but you can't grab it, right? And I wanted my students to play with data, not just sort of have it presented to them and do some graph they may not want or anything. So they changed. I think they knew I was sneaking in there in some way of grabbing the data that I felt like I was a hacker. It was real awesome. But they changed the structures, so I think people like me couldn't do that anymore. So I was like, dang it. So we had one fall of really good data that he was able to use, and we were able to do some stats for him, and everything was really fun. But it doesn't really work during the season because it's only for the bullpens on the side, not during the game. You don't put the thing during the game times. So in the spring, I was still talking to the dean, giving her an update. We talked about maybe getting a hitting one that was still pretty cheap that they could use. And she just said on a whim, she said, why don't we, what's the state-of-the-art kind of equipment for this? And she expressed her interest in starting a sports analytics program of some kind. And so this was exciting. I went and talked to a lot of coaches. I didn't just talk to baseball because this was sort of a bigger scale thing. And again, I was looking for devices that gave me raw data so I could use in the classroom for research purposes. And the coaches were engaging and interested in data, right? I didn't want sort of somebody to say, yeah, that's fine, but I don't know what you're talking about. So I went back and ended up going with baseball because they were one of the most data-driven. We've since hired other coaches that are pretty data-driven as well. And I chose TrackMan. And I'll tell you why in a minute, why that was the one we chose. And then along with that, the stats group was gracious enough to help me push data science, sports analytics certificate during that spring. So then August of that summer, it was installed, and I'll show you pictures of it in a minute, and we were ready to go. We started last year. We got a full year's worth of data, and we're still going, and it's pretty neat. So what it is, it's this Doppler radar system that if you ever been to the baseball field, it's up on top of the press box. And it's not cheap, right? So we're splitting the annual fee with baseball, this $5,000. But I'll tell you why that's kind of a really good deal considering what kind of data we're getting. We were the first and now still the only academic unit to own this device. It's always owned by athletics. So it was very awkward them talking to me because they kept trying to talk to me like a coach. I said, no, I'm really interested in the research. I could really care less about the nuances like that. And they were like, oh, huh. And then so they're thinking from a marketing perspective, I'm now getting calls from the directors of baseball operations for other universities saying, can we get our math departments to do it? And I was like, probably not. No, that's Maryland. I'm sure Maryland, they're like these R1 institutions. I'm sure that's probably not going to be something they're necessarily interested in. But it's neat. And a lot of people heard about us, and I'll show you some of our social media sort of outputs out there and everything. So what does it do? So it, after every pitch and swing, it produces 27 data points for each pitch and hit roughly. They keep adjusting it. They have this, it's the servers in-house, and they keep adding stuff and that it outputs and everything, because it's basically, as a Doppler radar, it's capturing all movement for a period of time, and then they just play with it and create this output of various values that we have. So how does it work? Well, we have to tag every pitch, right? So I have students in there. There's Cam and Abby's here. Go Abs, awesome. Yes, so he's tagging, and she's got our studio on to do any kind of analysis we might need and stuff like that. They worked pretty well together. So this is the interface. Basically, you have to tell the computer everything that happened, right? It gives you numbers, velocity, spins, all this kind of stuff, but it doesn't know what's happening. You have to say, oh, it was a strike called, ball called. You say it was in play, a foul ball, things like that. Who's batting? It's got the roster, but if there's a substitute, you have to put in there. So we're tagging the events that occurred. It's tagging the numbers associated with that event, which is important in terms of the data file, right? So after the game, there's this huge CVS file of every pitch that happens. And we get that raw data, right? That's the fun part. We get the entire game's data. It's not summarized somewhere and we just get graphs. We get the CSV. Did I put CVS? That's funny. The CSV file is ours. So then after that, students would summarize it in some particular way. Let's see how this looks here. Let's see. Is this going to be visible? This is Cam's GitHub site where he would put the numbers up, put some spray charts. I forgot what the package is. Is this Plotly or is that what it is? Yeah, okay. So it's interactive. You can turn stuff on and off. And of course, the resolution here is off. But you can, those of you who know R, this is pretty simple. So this is your offensive stuff. These are pitches, pitch locations, and so on. So that was one thing. So this was for the team. Right? The coaches wanted stuff for the team, and honestly, I wasn't necessarily that interested in the team stuff. It was the overall stuff that was were interesting to me. Oh yeah, I forgot. So the raw data is an example of it. So it's this is an app scrimmage. So that's our pitcher. Oh, it's not moving, is it? Shoot. Maybe I can do that. Yeah, that'll work. All right. You have the dexterity of both. You have to type that in, obviously. And eventually you get to the numbers, right? So it's literally, best way to say it is at the point the pitcher releases it, there's an X, Y, Z of where it was released, the velocity, the tilt of it, where the hand is tilted, the spin rate and its axis, well, that's part of the tilt, how much it's spinning, velocity, then it will do the break, how much was induced by spin, the spin efficiency, so it would tell you how much it moved from the point it released, from a straight line motion to its deviation, left or right, so a curveball is going to go more, something like that. Offensively, blah, blah, blah. Then it's where it is out the plate. It's bottom and midline of the plate. So you have, you can see that. And then from an offensive thing, it's how the velocity of it leaving the bat, its launch angle, its bearing, where it is from an XYZ coordinate, 110 feet down from the plate, which is a weird one, but it's there. Still haven't figured out exactly how that's useful. The spin rate of the hit gives you an idea of where you hit under it or square or something like that, and so on. So height, hang time, it estimates all that kind of stuff too. So we have all these really fun numbers, and other ones too. We don't use them all yet. That's part of the hope that we can get others involved. But, all right. With that, we can also, the really cool graph is this. Oh man, resolution is really messing this up. So this is, so I like putting this one down because nobody had really plotted this before. What this is the launch angle of the ball after you hit it, and this is the exit velocity. This is how fast it's leaving the hit, right? So it's how hard I hit it and the angle I hit it, right? This data has existed with TrackMan only, but a student at North Carolina created an image where he kind of did this, but then sort of closed the surfaces. And this is basically tagging what happened with each of these instances, right? So let's see if I can get to the, there we go. Right? So there are the instances, home runs, everything. And so you can kind of get an idea. Okay, to hit a home run, those are all over here, which means I have to hit them very hard. Right? They're over 90 miles an hour exit velocity, and the angle has to be between 25 and 35-ish, right? That's the optimal angle for home run hitting. If you hit it harder, you can hit it more shallow or higher, and so on. But anyway, so he closed this surfaces up and created sort of this image, and he did it with an image of somebody swinging and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, it took off like wildfire. He put it on a website or his Twitter page, and it was huge. Everybody. So a year later, he's being paid $50,000 from Major League Baseball organization to sort of do analytics for them. And he's doing stuff for the Carolina baseball team. This was a couple years back, right? And it was all because he had this creative way of visualizing something that was not necessarily common before, but now this data exists, right? We have thousands of this from a bunch of other games too. So anyway, it's really fun in the sense of trying to come up with that next graphic that's going to catch fire and then, get students known, right? That's what I'm banging on Abby figuring out eventually, right? Should come up with the next big thing. It'll be awesome. All right. She made this graph, by the way. She didn't put all the funky stuff yet, but that's all right. We're a real math department. We're not just trying to play games like that. All right. All right, so as far as app games, we get the results from the game. They would do some summaries that the coaches wanted, give it to the coaches, and that was fine. I wasn't really involved. Maybe in just some of the visualization stuff, but it was their call. They did it. We'd do that. But I wanted us to have some kind of presence. And they were really good at creating graphics. These are just a couple of them. I'll show you some more. But with the data we got from home runs, right? If somebody would hit a home run, we'd take a snapshot of the dashboard of the metrics. And then somebody else, usually Abby or somebody, would have various images that they would use. We have a few of them. And would create a graphic to post. So these were the later, more advanced ones. I thought the first one was the best. But we have a Twitter page, right? That's I'm still learning it. They make fun of me because I have a boring handle or whatever. But that's okay. Baby steps. But we have 302 followers. I've had like 5 in the last few weeks. It was like, wow, us, really? We haven't done anything. I haven't posted anything since May. But they go and see our stuff, and it's kind of fun. So as soon as the home run's hit, or whenever, if I'm not there, when they're there, they send me the image, and then we post it. And after every game, we would post the hardest hits. So these are the highest exit velocities from our players after each game. And so the original, let's go down to the original. This is the original graphic, which is still my favorite. It was awesome. And we had a lot of comments on it after we posted it. That's when we had 150 people start following us after we started posting an image. Because that's kind of what everybody does. Everybody's trying to one-up everybody. Some people do it as a Giphy, sort of with a ball flying out with all the numbers, and sort of it's a competition, right? I think we do better than LSU, right? I think we do. They were one of the people that kind of do it, but we're better. Carolina's stepped it up a little bit, but we have enough variety. They're really good at having variations in it that it's kind of neat. But that's helped us a lot. And I try to cite them. I try to cite us. Well, we are linked because I put math in there. But arts and sciences, TrackMan, Cam and Abby, I try to tag them, or whatever that it's called on Twitter. Whatever, tag, I guess. It was fun. Now, I got nervous for a while because I'm like, oh, so do I post something every day? Do I do a weekly thing? Is it just for games? And I kind of pulled back and said, I don't know yet. So as long as this helped people sort of watch us when they were watching, all the players started following us, and so it was great. And so they were excited to see these graphics, and they'd like it. And Cam wanted to do extra stuff, and I was like, no, this is not a personal one, so let's keep it clean. I want to do a little bit of trash talking to opponents, but I said, let's not do that. But I'm trying to develop this more, and I'm still learning how to do it. And I think many will attest that in my family that I'm not the most advanced from a social media perspective, but I'm trying. All right. But giving the stuff to coaches is useful. That's fine. This is PR stuff that needs to happen, especially as far as we get more into everything. But this was why I really wanted to do this, right? So there's an option that was free. Hopefully it'll still be free. It should be free every year. Hopefully they'll give it to me for free at least. This data sharing option. So there's not a lot of teams, maybe 50 to 60 in the country that have TrackMan. All the major league ones, ballparks have it for the college level. There's only about 50 or 60, maybe. Yeah. But about 30 of them this last year agreed to this data sharing option, which all it was is when TrackMan would get their game and clean it up, their data, they would put it in some repository, some server. And we all had access to it, right? And I'm fairly certain that I'm the only professor who's looking at these 1,200 games, NCAA Division I games, that's saying, wow, we can do a lot of stuff with this. This is really cool. So this is what excited me. This is a huge data set that needs to be played with, and we started some stuff with it. We're trying to sort of build on that, but we'll have another 1,200 this year, so we'll have a time series of them because we'll have it every year, and so we can do within season or cross season changes in terms of batting averages, pitch velocities, directions, braking, whatever. This is an initial thing I did because I found code that did it online, and I was able to adapt it in R, and I was proud of myself, so I'm showing you this. I made this. So these are all, the strike zones at various probabilities for called pitches. A called pitch is one where the batter doesn't swing. So the umpire has to say what it is. So it's either a ball or a strike. So these are the strikes. So this is the region, this region here is where if 90% of the balls in this region are called strike. And you're thinking, well, it's inside, that's right. Why isn't it 100%? Because sometimes it doesn't happen. And then this goes out to 50%. What the coaches want was this 50%, or even this is 75. Because they're saying, okay, here's the strike zone, right? And this is a batter being left-handed or right-handed or left-handed. The question was, okay, where do I tell my pitchers to pitch that they have a 75% chance of that ball being called a strike? Because if it's outside the strike zone and they have a 75% chance, they're saying, I'm going to take that chance, right? And it's really apparent with a left-handed batter, right? So they're standing this side, thanks. They're standing on this side as a left-handed batter, and the strike zone is pushed over, right? Even though it's beyond what is officially the plate, way out here, it's a 75% chance that ball's going to be called a strike. So the coaches are like, what is that number? How many inches is that away from midline or from the end? Because I want to know that because we're going to use that. Same thing with left and right high line. We did a bunch of sort of variations of it, but this is sort of a preliminary work on umpire bias in terms of, this is an obvious bias with left and right-handed batters. So all the umpire is doing is standing there, but it's somebody standing here versus here, and they're just seeing the balls come in, but they're obviously biased in a way as far as what they're going to call, which is fairly significant. And this is a huge one, right, because they can completely mess up a person doing that. So we're early stages. The pitching coach wants to look at a detailed analysis of fastballs and look at what makes a good one. So the big data, it's not I guess data discovery-ish, is spin rate of a fastball, how fast it's spinning and how fast it's going. And they did correlations with that in the last 5 years-ish or so. And basically, the faster you can spin it, the faster you can throw it. So they find young pitchers who have high spin rates but may not throw very fast, but they say, there's an upside to that one because they're spinning it very fast. Also, though, if you have abnormally high spin or abnormally slow spin. Now, you're not thinking about this, you're just throwing it, right? They're just looking at the numbers. They're not telling the pitcher to change it. But if you're on a boundary or on one of the end spectrums, the ball's going to move differently. One will rise, one will drop. And so if you know this, if the coach knows, oh, you have a very slow spinning fastball, that means it might rise. So is it rise? I don't remember which one it is. Yeah, I think it is. Then maybe I'll have you throw a little lower so it'll come up or higher. I can direct where you pitch it because they're pretty good at placing it. It's just knowing the movement that you naturally have can affect the strategy and what you do. So we want to take this one step further and look at these movements in fastballs and see if there's any correlation. If there's anything in here, right? There's 60,000 fastballs, right? What's going on? Which ones do they hit? Which ones do they don't? And things like that. So that's the goal. If anybody's interested, we have plenty of data. Please come by. So that's what we're doing with baseball. It's been fun. It's been great. But that's not all we're doing at all. Women's basketball has been using heart monitors for the last year to measure their load and effort throughout the year, practices and games, everything. And their trainer spends hours extracting a spreadsheet and using Excel to create this color-coded load measure of who's excessive, who's working too hard in a given day and not. Because the idea was they wanted to minimize injuries. And so he was saying, whoever's redlining for multiple days, we need to let them slow down. So being able to tell the coach, you need to slow this person down because they're working too hard. Well, he was spending hours doing it. And I knew it was something that could be done in like 5 minutes or less in R, and then take 20 seconds every time you got a new file. And so I finally found a student, Josh Arford, who was in the article recently, our transfer stuff. He's been doing that and working with it and doing, actually, he's kind of has it pretty much done. He's doing that. He's part of his internship. So he created this, right? So basically, we get a file every day with the rates, and then he sort of stacks them in, and then he's got a color bar that he puts in there, sorts in, and then it just creates. So then you can look across and say, all right, this athlete's redlining too much, this one's working too hard, this one's not enough, might be injured or whatever, and they know what's going on. But it's one that I'll never forget. The first time he went in, he didn't have the numbers, he just had the colors. And this trainer said, oh, it'd be really nice if you had the numbers. And before he finished speaking, he had put it up because it was just a line in R, did it. And he freaked out. The trainer was like, oh my God, how did you do that? That would have taken me an hour because he'd have to go and type them in, right? And I said, I told you this automation thing is the way we need to go. It's just finding where I do it. Well, of course, I'm nervous because when Josh graduates, then I have to sort of do this and get it to him, or at least teach him how to use R to do that, right? That's the plan, the hope at least. But he's doing a few things with them, breaking it down by load, by positions, and he's got other projects he's going to be doing with them. He's going to be our first sports analytics certificate graduate next year, or this next semester. And so he's going to be working with them to do a bunch of other assessments on things. So that was fun. And we also, and it's not just that, Field Hockey did the same thing. They just bought a different brand of heart monitor, which is weird, but they did. And he just got that data last week. It's brand new stuff, so they're trying to figure out what to do with it, and he's helping sort of start this visualization process with them. And not only sort of that, Ross also does some sports analytics stuff. He's been doing Power 5 football success rates as a function of recruiting talent and things like that and other things. So there's other stuff going on. I've been also in talks with the exercise physiology folks about this because their students understand what the output is. Our students know how to make cool looking stuff with it, and we're kind of slowly working in developing joint projects. One student I talked to this week that was interested in doing that, so I sent her to Scott Collier, and hopefully that'll come out with something. But there's definitely a lot of interest over there because they have a lot more data being collected, and it's how to analyze it and do stuff with it. So, all right. So that's the playing with students, really fun kind of stuff with data, but we actually had the certificate, right? And so just to refresh you, in case you don't know, their certificate, it should be, nope, this one. Oh, not that one, that one. All right. There. So our two data science courses that we created, sports analytics course that we put together, that I was my first semester officially teaching, although I taught it as a 40-10 last spring to pilot it. Economics was a sports class that already existed, and it had some interesting side stuff. I don't focus on any money stuff when I'm teaching the sports modeling course. I don't do draft stuff. I don't do betting. I don't do any of that. No fantasy stuff. That's what a lot of the students want to talk about, but I don't do fantasy stuff, partly as FAR I can't, actually. But also just because I don't know it really well. I don't understand it, which is like weird to them, but like there's other really interesting stuff with sports aside from that. And then an internship. And hopefully those will be with programs here. If a student doesn't know what they want to work with, they'll be doing baseball data and playing with that. But they're more than welcome to work with a shared project with other faculty or with another sports program like the ones I mentioned. Volleyball has expressed interest, although their data is different in the way they gather it. And there's been a few others that have talked, but we never came around to put anything together. So, right, and given the course that we have, I keep on going back and forth. I should probably just do one or the other, right? That's all right. It's making it dynamic and more engaging. Is anybody else's mouth getting dry? Or is it just me? Nothing an IPA wouldn't fix. All right. So, what do I focus on in the class? This has been the hard part, is finding a book, as with most sort of these kind of newish type classes. A lot of the books are written by college and business faculty. Their sports management is where they usually teach this stuff, and I don't want to talk about sports management. I'm not talking about drafting in terms of teams and budgets and ticket sales. I don't want to talk about that. So it's group project focused, and I try to focus on the main sports. I try to dabble in something else, but it's kind of a function of the students in the class and what they know. So we've got to kind of try to be dynamic in that way. The four main things I try to cover: some measures of individual performance measures, team performance measures, rankings, and then game simulation. This is some Markov chain stuff, used just with baseball, but you can do it with anything. It's sort of making a simulation of a game given probabilities something happens. Rankings is fun. We're about to go into that in the next couple of weeks, week or so. And since AMP's ranked, we'll do NCAA rankings and we'll talk about how everybody else measures and all that kind of stuff. But I try to cover some significant-ish techniques in analytics, clustering, precision tree stuff, some regressions, just as an application of this so they can kind of see it in that way. I'm hoping it's tools they'll be able to use. But again, the book was hard. I found this one, Analyzing Baseball Data in R, which was kind of convenient since we had baseball data, and we were using R. So for the first half of the class, or less than that, we did baseball, but students got tired of it. And I could tell. I was like, all right, we'll put this down. I mean, the approaches and stuff you still use anyway. It's still doing a plot of some kind of either a scatter or regression of something. So the techniques are still useful, but they kind of wanted to move on, so we did. But I did use the TrackMan data in the lectures. I had, who knows who won the NCAA championship this last year? Yeah, don't be so mathematician-like. Really, nobody knows? It's a smart school. And an SEC won. There's only one of those. Yes. Vanderbilt won because they have the best pitching lab in the country. They've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in this lab. It's amazing. They have TrackMan inside, Rapsodo. They have high-resolution cameras. They can sort of put all the things in there and show all the mechanics of everything happening. It's state-of-the-art. And it has turned into, now it's nothing that the pitching coaches are doing necessarily, I think, in TAPS, but kids, the best kids in the country who are really good say, oh, I want to pitch in that lab. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And so they ended up having one of the best freshman players who was pretty amazing. Where did I put? It's right here. So I had them do a pitcher analysis, and I gave them the from those 1,200 games, I found 3 pitchers. This one was a Mississippi State pitcher, the best strikeout pitchers in the country. So Mississippi State, a Louisville, and the best one from Vanderbilt. I did one with all Vanderbilt pitchers. But they were some of the better ones, and they had to sort of do an analysis looking at clustering of pitches. Because what's really great with clustering with these data is looking at velocity, spin, and axis, right? So a fastball is going to be the fastest when they pitch, so those balls should cluster out. The spin rate's going to be a certain way compared to a curveball because that's going to spin differently and be slower, so those should stand out from a cluster analysis. And the changeup's going to be sort of a different angle. You're not turning it in a weird way. It'll be slower, but it should sort of stand out. And those are usually three main ones. These guys are really good. They have like 4 or 5 pitches, but typically people have 3. And it really does stand out nicely. So using that data, this is one group. They did some scatter plots of pitch locations of the 3 pitchers, and you can tell like this guy's a fastball pitcher because everything's kind of down the middle. This guy has a little more of an angle because he's doing more breaking balls. And this is the Vandy guy. His splitter was really good. Slider, I mean. That's the blue one. This one right here. It's what helped them win the national championship. It's a pitch that looks like a fastball and then it just dies away, and it's amazing because you don't know. In the 0.3 of a second, you have to decide and swing it. You guess fastball, and then it just breaks and falls away from you. So it's becoming the most popular pitch. It's just finding kids that can do it is sort of that next thing because now it's a hard one to do. But of course, Vandy has it, and so they did that. Yes.
How did you know the pitch type?
In the tagging process. So the person's tagging. They're seeing well.
Observer watching the game, right?
Well, you have, but yes, after every pitch, you have their velocity, spin, and tilt. And so you're going from that. So Abby's there on the side saying, and what they're really doing is when the pitcher goes to warm up, they try every pitch. And so they're looking then and saying, all right, and they tell you, right, they tell the catcher what they're doing. So then they know, okay, the fastball's roughly there. Look at that curveball spin. We know that spin's going to be the curveball. And but they can get it wrong. And what TrackMan does is when you're done with your tagging your game, you send it to them and they clean it. And part of the cleaning is making sure it has an algorithm that predicts what the pitch was based on all the pitches that were there, and it makes sure you're right and it kind of corrects you. But they got pretty good at it. I didn't. They could work at a major league organization right now tagging games because they know everything. It's pretty amazing how quickly they picked it up. I'm still afraid to click the wrong button and think it's going to crash. And they're just like, oh, wait, go back, let me delete that, fix it. And like 5 seconds before the next pitch, they've fixed it. And it's like, I'm like, wow, I'm going to step out now because I feel useless. But yeah. So anyway, doing these analysis about what happened, what occurred, it was fun. It was a good project. Not all the projects I've assigned have been good. It's still like a learning process. I did one last semester that failed dismally, was getting the best running backs in the NFL and going back and looking at their combine data and trying to do a decision tree on predicting, given combine information, how fast you were, how hard you jumped, all this, can you predict anything? And it was not good. So I'm trying to get a better one of those. That's sort of one thing I did. I found some that I used in class that was pretty good actually this last week, but then it's giving them a project on it that I can sort of work with, and I'm still trying to find that right middle ground on that. All this data, and yet it's hard to like find the right thing. I respect you statisticians more every day. You don't just get a file and say, yeah, this will work. It doesn't have to die, right? Yeah, you can't wing it with that stuff. It's not easy. All right, so what are my future plans? Oh, perfect, 40, that's about where I wanted to go with that. Find someone else to teach the course, right? It's not good to teach something all the time, right? It needs some variation. I'm Ross Goski, and Joel Sankey. All right. Santi. But, so not you, I wouldn't make you do it. No, yes. Yeah. So also I'm trying to develop the right web presence. So my website hasn't been updated in a few years because it's a CS and I lost my password, and Daryl, what's his name, retired 5 years ago, and I don't know who to ask, and then I forgot I had one, and so now I'm thinking, oh, I need to set up a web page, and then they're telling me, well, something better maybe, some kind of presence, and I'm, before Abby leaves, she's in the data analytics program now, so she leaves by August, hopefully not, maybe, well, hopefully, I guess. Dang it. I need help in sort of determining the right way to have people find us, and students and anybody else, just to sort of show what we're doing. Because that's the way these students, skipping down here, get internships, is by having an online presence, social media presence, where people see it and say, oh, wow, that's really cool. You did that. And they will contact you in that way. So a way of highlighting what our students do that people will see so that they can find our students. That's kind of the way it works, right? So, and the optimal goal, once it's something, I mean, I think given time, if we can produce some good products, I think a program, I've talked to some of the minor league analytics sort of director people, and they know what we're doing because we're the first sort of college to sort of have this kind of program that's sort of focused on baseball kind of. So they're intrigued. But I have a feeling that eventually if we can produce some stuff that's really good, they'd be willing to fund sort of summer stipends for us to analyze their data for them, sort of outsource it basically. Instead of hiring somebody for $50,000, they can give us 20, and you give it to 3 students, 5,000 each, and then they're sort of working on this data and doing, and it creates a pool for them to potentially hire. There's eventually some interest in that, maybe. I'm working on that, and as long as I can get students as good as Abby, then there's a chance. So we'll see. But also I'd like to, so the big sports analytics conference is the MIT Sloan one every March in Boston, and I went 2 years ago, and it was pretty amazing, and it's cutthroat from a student perspective. It's every Ivy League business management, sports management graduate student is there going after all these high-level people that are there doing it. And it's pretty intense. But they have a hackathon, which is students apply and have to get more information in the process. And then they show up, and they're given this data set, and they have overnight to sort of find some solution. And it's professional and student. So there's some professional researchers that do it, hoping to get a contract with ESPN or something. But then the student competition is a fun one too. When I was there 2 years ago, a Davidson student won it, because Tim Chartier has a sports analytics sort of thing going on there. And he won it, and because it was NBA data, and he has NBA data because he has a contract with the Hornets to sort of analyze some stuff. So the students knew what that was and how to analyze it. So the 3 hours or 2 to figure out what the data was, they already had the advantage. So they did a really nice little project with that. Presenting research is hard. There's some really top-end researchers there. Usually they're funded from the major sports organizations. From European soccer is big. Barcelona has a phenomenal analytics group. And I think Chelsea is one of the better ones, although they all do kind of in England have them too. But Barcelona is one of the better ones. And they'll have some of their researchers come and present stuff. And it's really good. I mean, it's really good stuff. So they have this laser technology that has 6 cameras around the pitch. And it measures in such a really high frequency every XYZ coordinate of every player and ball in a really high frequency of the whole game. And then, as somebody called it, it turns into the mathematics of moving dots, because you just turn them all into dots moving around. And so they've taken that to a strategic level that's, pretty amazing. We use that technology in the States for basketball. We put them in basketball arenas. The NBA did this. A few teams did it, and it became such an advantage that the NBA said, no, we have to put this in all our arenas because it's not fair, because you're really learning all this stuff. And so this idea of these moving dots on a basketball court has really changed the way they analyze that sport. It's really good stuff going on with that. So the projects are pretty high end, and I'd love to be there eventually, be at that level. It's just need to build and get the students involved and do that. We would be one of the few primarily undergraduate sort of places, students doing that. So, but that'd be fun. It's really intense. It was really cool. There's a lot of really important people there. The year I went, the keynote speaker was Barack Obama. So it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, wow, that's unexpected. He just wanted to go visit his daughter at Harvard, apparently. So he's like, yeah, I'll go talk for like 45 minutes and then go, see my daughter. But that was, it's a really, really cool conference. Learned a lot. So anyway, I think that's the last slide. I hope I just gave you an idea that, I'm just kind of trying to build it. It's kind of working. I'm not a sports analyst. I'm a mathematical ecologist, right? So this has been a kind of a shift in thinking. But it's been fun to learn some of this stuff because it's fun data. It's really interesting stuff. And talking to the coaches has been exciting too, because they see it in a different way and want to have this one answer. And it's like, yeah, you can't do that. Or that's not really the answer you want. And they don't understand what variance is, right? The mean means it's all you need to know. I'm like, well, yeah, not really. And there's this other level of information. So it's been fun to sort of share that kind of knowledge with them. And students have been great. Like, Abby's been awesome. I really don't want you to leave, but you're going to.
I'm thankful for all of you guys here. So
Yeah. Yeah, well, you've done a lot for us. I will, yeah. Anyway, I'll stop now and answer any questions you might.
What happened to the volleyball?
So the coach, who was Chad Willis, he left to be the head coach of Georgia Southern. So I don't know if Matt, the head coach, is as into the data analysis as before, because Chad is the one that did all that. He had the scheme, he did everything. I'm assuming they still pay for the data volley thing, but that was an example where one of where a lot of analytics happens with some of these other sports is they videotape the game, they ship it somewhere out of the country, and in 48 hours they have the most detailed statistical summary you can possibly imagine of that game. And volleyball is like a 120-page document with every sort of possible statistic you can imagine. The problem is it's a PDF, you don't get any raw data. They summarize everything, so it's not really something that our students could really do any analytics with. They just had to, he wanted them to summarize it easier because players don't understand what that is, to sort of take it out and summarize it, but it was hard. That wasn't going to be as interesting. I didn't want students to turn into, either video taggers or just typing up stuff. I wanted them to actually do some coding. So it's kind of I'm not sure where that is headed at this point.
We thought about maybe putting a data visualization course in there, just a standalone, because it strikes me that a lot of what you're showing here is data visualizations, and that's kind of a balance between kind of art form and
it is,
understanding of the
right?
underlying structure.
And that's the one unique aspect of the stuff I did as a researcher, as an individual based modeler. It was having this data visualized in a cool way that I think was the most fun. And so that's the part I like.
It's also super powerful. You're showing these visualizations that you're able to then, spit out on the Twitter feed.
Right. I'm hoping that they get some here, the basics, and but then with R, right, it's about just trying to figure it out. Like, let's see if we can do this that does this. All right, how do we do that? And Abby's been great at yelling at me on text, like, Plotly sucks, it doesn't let me do this, or I can't do this. We're trying to do some Shiny apps with it so that it's dynamic, but it doesn't play as well. And so part of the pain is having to just figure that out. And as Lasandhi says, can you ask the question in 5 words, right? Then Google it, right? So, and that's what I learned, right? Early on to do that. And so I don't know what the next level in terms of teaching visualization that might be. They would be the experts in that. But yeah, it is the creativity in that. She saw somebody recently who got hit up on social media really big because the spray chart with the field and where all the balls are, they did a loop and did sort of the balls flying to there dynamically. It was like, that's just a for loop, right? But everybody else is like, oh my God, that's amazing. I haven't seen that before. It's like, dang it, why couldn't I just think of that? It's finding that next one that's not so complicated, just nobody's thought of it yet, to really get people to see it, like it, follow it, and go. There's a whole social media viral aspect to this that I don't understand, that I'd love to sort of understand it so I can do that. But yeah, that'd be nice. Other questions? What was that?
I have all sorts of questions actually, but how do they keep, in the basketball, how do they keep track of where the people are going?
It's
Cameras? It's not something on them.
it's Israeli laser missile technology.
It's what?
Israeli missile technology, laser missile stuff. And they transport it to a soccer pitch, and they have 6 of them or something. And it's somehow registering movement. And so it's a huge data set. Now there's software, obviously, that takes the raw data and says, all right, this is this individual, and it sort of makes it manageable there's a secondary raw data analysis assessment that gives it something you can analyze. But yeah, it's pretty amazing. And on
as opposed to like GPSing each person.
Yeah, that's another way, but that doesn't necessarily capture, it could. You just have this thing dangling around as opposed to something that's just not, right? So that's the cheaper way to go. And I've talked to some of the coaches about GPS stuff. Football had 6 of these devices that didn't do heart rate, didn't do GPS, but it did physical load, changes in motion, and they wanted to look at how much force they were producing and trying to manage that. And it was a previous strength and conditioning coach. And he put it on some skill position guys, and he asked us to help him look at it because he said it's just a lot of numbers, we don't know what we're doing. And then they left to Louisville. And the new strength and conditioning coach was interested, but he couldn't find them. I'm sure the other guy took it with him, I guess, I don't know. But they have then too focused on sort of trying to play. So But the GPS side of it is another side that's kind of cool. And a lot of these heart monitor ones have an option for that. It's just more expensive. So they're just focusing on the cheaper physiology side because they just want to mitigate injury, right? That's the whole focus. I mean, the Europeans now know everything about strategy in soccer. They've analyzed up to a dozen games and they figured that out. But one thing they want to prevent is injury. That's the biggest thing. And they're trying to figure out what this 360 model of an athlete is. It's sort of, okay, tell me if an athlete pulls a hamstring, I want to have enough data on what that student athlete did, nutrition-wise, rest, everything. So we can maybe find some correlations with why that happened and then figure out how we can prevent it. That's what their focus is now. So injury prevention is the biggest thing. They're trying to figure out how to mitigate that because that costs a lot of money, and that's the next big thing, which from a health perspective is really nice, and it fits along with what the NCAA wants to do. It's just it's expensive to get the kind of data, and then having people analyze it is tough. And we don't want to have that much information on our student athletes, like how much you slept, what you've been drinking or smoking or something, right? Professionals, they can do that, right? Because they're paying you $1 million, you're going to do what I tell you to do, and you're like, all right, put that on me, and I'll tell you everything you need to know. Not with college students, it's probably not a good idea, right? So, yeah. Other questions? All right, good. I hope that was informative. Hope you know I wasn't just messing around and not doing anything for last year.